Minister, Leyla Guven, an imprisoned MP for the pro-Kurdish HDP party in Turkey, is currently on hunger strike for the last 69 days. Leyla has been on hunger strike in a Turkish prison against her unjust detention since the 8th of November and is now in a critical condition. She faces over 31 years for simply being critical of the Turkish regime after she rightly condemned the Turkish invasion of Afrin and other human rights abuses. Over 260 Kurdish political prisoners have now joined her on hunger strike in Turkish jails. They're calling for her release and an end to the isolation of Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan. We know that prisoners on hunger strike are being attacked in their cells. Cell confinements and harsh disciplinary punishments are worsening the situation in the jails. Minister, as Leyla's condition is now deteriorating, it is imperative that the international community acts to save her life. Will you urgently raise this case with your Turkish counterpart, or the Turkish authorities? Last weekend, Sinn Féin MEP for the North, Martina Anderson, travelled to Turkey and met with Leyla's daughter and her lawyers to extend her solidarity and to discuss her condition. Along with other international observers, she attempted to visit Leyla in jail. They were denied entry to the prison by the Turkish authorities, and there were tense scenes outside the prison after they refused entry. They witnessed at first hand the tactics of the heavily armed Turkish police when they visited the headquarters of the HDP party and saw lines of police in riot gear when they left the building. Minister, it is clear that ending the illegal policy of prison isolation is key to advancing the peace process. The solitary confinement of Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan and other political prisoners is a gross violation of their human rights. Any form of isolation or solitary confinement is strictly prohibited under the United Nations minimum rules of the treatment of prisoners, also known as the Mandela Rules, which were adopted by the UN in May 2015. So it's wrong what's happening to this prisoner, and he's a key to unlocking the conflict in that country between the Kurds and Turkey. Minister, our own history has many examples of hunger striking prisoners. We are now remembering the centenary of An Céad Dáil this month, and one of the TDs elected to that historic assembly was Terence MacSweeney, who later became Mayor of Cork and who died on hunger strike in 1920. I personally remember vividly Bobby Sands MP and Ciaran Doherty TD dying on hunger strike in 1981. So, Minister, at this critical time for Leyla Guven, I urge you to urgently raise the circumstances surrounding her arrest and imprisonment with the Turkish government and join the international action to try and save her life. I think it's crucial. The woman is after 69 days on hunger strike. She's at a critical phase. We need to raise our voice. The woman is in prison. She's facing a long prison sentence for merely going on social media to raise the issue of the illegal invasion of Afrin and raising other legitimate points of view in relation to the situation in Turkey and the impact it's having on the Kurds and the Kurdish people. So I'd ask you, Minister, if at all possible, to raise this issue. I think it's an issue that the Irish government need to raise their voice up and condemn what's happening in Turkey, and particularly to this woman.
Minister Cannon.
Ireland is very concerned with the hunger strike of the Kurdish prisoners, in particular that of Miss Leyla Guven, the deputy of the People's Democratic Party, the HDP, who has been on hunger strike since November the 7th, 2018, and is reportedly, as the deputy says, in a critical condition. It's our understanding that over 160 Kurdish prisoners in 36 prisons are now on hunger strike. And officials from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade have in the past conveyed our concerns to the Turkish Embassy here in Dublin in regard to the arrest of HDP MPs, along with other elected politicians, journalists and academics over the past 2 years. And we are well aware of the challenge faced by Turkey in July of 2016 with the attempted coup d'etat, but the state of emergency is now over and the rule of law and indeed freedom of expression must prevail. We are worried at the reports of a serious deterioration in Ms Gouvin's health and would strongly urge the Turkish authorities to take urgent measures to alleviate the situation, including her immediate transfer to a hospital where she can get adequate medical attention and treatment, and enable contact with her lawyers and her family. It is of particular concern that the delegation of MEPs and lawyers who sought to meet with Ms Gouvin on Saturday were denied entry. Ms Gouvin's hunger strike is specifically related to the rights of lawyers and family members to visit Abdullah Öcalan, the head of the Kurdish Workers' Party, and it's our hope that the decision over the weekend by the Turkish authorities to allow Mr Öcalan a visit from his brother for the first time in 2 years will be the start of a process leading to the resolution of this particular crisis. On the wider Kurdish issue, it is clear that this can only be addressed through dialogue aiming at establishing a peaceful, comprehensive and sustainable solution. Ireland has called for the resumption of such a dialogue to allow the political process to resume, and we continue to support efforts to maintain contacts between the Kurdish and Turkish sides through our funding of the Democratic Progress Institute's Turkey programme. On the wider issue of rights within Turkey, we have been consistent in expressing our grave concern at the disproportionate scale and scope of measures taken by the Turkish authorities in the wake of the failed coup attempt in July of 2016. And together with our European partners, we have conveyed our concerns on the backsliding on the rule of law and fundamental rights, the deterioration of the independence and functioning of the judiciary, and the restrictions, detentions, imprisonments and other measures targeting parliamentarians, journalists, human rights defenders and others exercising their fundamental rights and freedoms. And I want to assure the Deputy that the Irish Government will continue to monitor developments in Turkey on the specific issue of the hunger strike and also on the wider issue of human rights, freedom of expression, rule of law and democracy.
Since the abandonment of the Kurdish-Turkish peace initiative in 2015, Turkey has intensified its military war and the political oppression of Kurds. The suppression of political parties and the jailing of Kurdish political leaders has become the norm as Turkish democracy has descended into authoritarian rule. There are now an estimated 260,000 political prisoners in Turkey. Human rights organisations are reporting that human rights violations against prisoners are again on the increase. The Irish Government needs to continue to raise its voice against these gross human rights violations. The Turkish Government must stop the torture of prisoners, respect freedom of speech, uphold the rule of law and respect the role of democratically elected representatives. It should also respect its own laws and release MP Dáil Éireann and embrace an opportunity to advance the peace process. Minister, would you not agree that the only long-term solution to the Kurdish issue is peaceful and democratic dialogue, not isolation and imprisonment? In any country where parliamentary democracy functions properly, members of parliament and leaders of political parties are not put in prison for their political beliefs. Yet it is the day-to-day reality in Turkey, and there is now the very real possibility that an MP might die on hunger strike. Minister, I urge you again to urgently raise Dáil Éireann's case with the Turkish Government and join the international acts to save her life.
Ministers, 2 minutes.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank the Deputy for raising this very important question and also all others who have made contributions in the House this evening. We share the concerns expressed in relation to the hunger strike of the Kurdish prisoners, and it's clear that this is an issue that needs to be urgently addressed before it deteriorates. And on the specific issue of Ms Gouvin, as her condition is most serious, I want to reiterate that the Turkish authorities need to take urgent measures to alleviate the situation, including immediately transferring her to a hospital where she can get adequate medical attention and treatment and enable contact with her lawyers and family. The Deputy also raised the issue of the wider Kurdish conflict, and I repeat, there can be no security solution to this issue. It can only be addressed through dialogue, something we're very familiar with on this island, on a peaceful, comprehensive and sustainable solution, and that dialogue needs to resume. As I stated earlier, officials from our Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade have conveyed our concerns on human rights issues to the Turkish Embassy in Dublin in the past, and we will continue to raise our concerns about any government actions that fall short of the international standards and the obligations to which Turkey has subscribed and committed itself. And I want to conclude by saying that Turkey remains a key partner of the European Union, and as such, when Ireland, along with our European partners, raises these human rights issues, we do so out of a desire to see a strong, secure and democratic Turkey in which all can find their place and make their individual contributions to the country's future.